Hi guys. So today I'd like to discuss prefabs and instantiation of prefabs in Unity. Okay, so what sort of situation would you want prefabs, and what is instantiation? What would you want to do? So the typical example I'd normally give would be if you wanted to fire bullets, you have to create the bullets in the scene so you can see them and they'll move, and you can create as many of them as you want as you press the button to fire. Now, obviously, we've seen how to create objects before. We've gone to GameObject, 3D object, and we created things like capsules. So here we have a capsule that could be a bullet, So now, obviously, if you have a model of a bullet, you might want to use that, but the capsule for the time being will work just fine. Now, that's fine. We created this game object, and if we wanted to create another one, we could just easily create another capsule. And you can see we've now two capsules. That's all very well when we're in Unity, we want to create them, but obviously when you're playing in a game, that's not going to work. You're going to want to be able to, press a button, detect the button press to fire a gun or to fire whatever, and the bullet would appear and fire off and hopefully hit something. Okay, so let's keep with that sort of theme here now. So first of all, just a couple of things. What do bullets do? So to me, bullets just basically go straight. Okay, so you point them in the direction they shoot. Okay, now we won't worry about gravity and them falling down. We'll just send them off in a given direction. We'll keep them in that direction, and we might see if we can hit something and see if we can do damage to that something in some way, shape, or form. The thing that's got me a little worried here is that when I look at this screen here, I see the green arrow, the red arrow, and the blue arrow. The green arrow, according to our gizmo up here, represents up and down, which is fine. That's what it looks like. The red arrow indicates the x-axis, which is left to right. Now, because the camera is here, so if I go to the camera and, okay, let's just show you this in action. So if I was to go to the camera and move, you can see it is moving left to right. Now, again, it's all about orientations. Obviously, if you move the camera around, then the moving along the X might be left to right. If we have the camera over here, for example, then it would just look like it's moving away. So again, perspective. But the thing that has me worried is the Z guy, in terms of which way would you like your bullet to go? Typically, if you're playing a game, you'd be looking forward and you would shoot the bullet forward, which would imply that forward typically would be represented by the Z-axis, forward and backwards. So as it increases, it's going forward. As it decreases, it's going backwards. Okay, so you can see our bullet there. So the orientation of the bullet is incorrect, because I would expect that the bullet would, at least look like it's traveling in a bullety direction, or orientated in a bullety direction. So to me, that looks wrong. So this is a little thing that can happen a lot in models. If you create your model in a system like Maya or Blender or 3D Studio Max or whatever you do it, sometimes they can have different conventions in terms of what up is. So some might have Z as up and X and Y being on the ground, and others have Y up and so on and so forth. So the way that you want it to work in here might be different to the way that it comes in. And in this case, we're looking at it and we're saying, okay, that looks like the cylinder isn't orientated the way I'd like it. Okay, now we could probably look, if you look down in the capsule down here, capsule collider, we can change the direction of these things, but that's just the collider bit, it's not the overall bit. Okay, I don't want to mess anything up there. So I'm just going to delete that guy there now and go back to the first capsule. So how do we get around that? Well, it's easy enough to do this. What you can do is you can right click in your hierarchy here and create an empty one, an empty game object, and we call it bullet. Okay, and then what we do is, I suppose I should give you the reason why that won't work, why we have to do it this way. If I was to say that the orientation of this bullet is wrong, and I'd like it to be kind of lengthways going parallel to the Z, well, I could say, well, why not rotate it? And that's no problem. You can go up here to the rotation. But when you rotate it up here, you can see that the, okay, what am I doing there? Sorry, no. Control Z, I'm on the bullet, apologies. I take the capsule here, and if I was to rotate that, you can see that as I rotate the capsule, the blue arrow goes with it, saying this is my new forward. So its forward, if we tell it to go forward, is always going to go with that blue arrow, and it's not quite what we'd like. Okay, so what are we doing? What are we going to do? So that rotating it like this doesn't really work. So what we need to do is try to keep the rotation relative to, keep kind of the world type rotation here. Well, it's not quite the world rotation. It's we want the forward of our bullet to be kind of independent of these axes here of the capsule. Okay, so here's our bullet placed at 0, 0, 0. I want the capsule to also be placed at 0, 0, 0. So I just make sure that I have that there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate the capsule. You can see this looks kind of along the lines of what we're aiming for. Obviously, we'll be having to head up to 90, so we'll just go ahead and put 90 in up here. Now, as the capsule is there, you can see the forward of that capsule is pointing straight down, but the bullet's cap forward is straight there. Now, that's just because two things are occupying the same space. And what we're going to do now is we'll just drag that capsule and we'll pull it onto the bullet. Okay, now if I click on the bullet, we've added the capsule as a child. What that basically means is it's basically attached to the bullet. Now the bullet is facing the right direction. The capsule is rotated, but it's rotated and it's kind of attached to the bullet as it is. So for example, if I was to move my bullet forward here, now you can see that the capsule moves in the direction we would like it to move, which is nice. So you can always add something as a child of a game object and then rotate the child inside and there, and that will basically get rid of orientation type problems, some basic orientation type problems. Sometimes it can get rid of scale problems or whatever as well. You may have to do, sometimes you might want to do something funny with the position because you might want, for example, the 0 of the position to be exactly on the floor, not in the kind of the belly button of the character or whatever. So there's different things you might want to do to your character or to your object in a game, and if the model doesn't come in exactly the way you'd like it, this is one easy way of getting around it. Okay, so this bullet is going to be it's going to be the bullet that we're going to make, and we're going to create many of them. Okay, and we're going to be able to create many of them, hopefully through code. Now, so typically the first thing we want to do is we want to kind of build this bullet up first. Okay, so and all this bullet really is going to do is what any bullet does, is it keeps going until it hits something. Okay, now if I press play, obviously that bullet is just going to stay exactly where it is because we've said do nothing to it. Okay, that's the bullet, it's doing exactly what we told it to, which is nothing. Okay, so what do? What we need is a script to maybe influence how the bullet acts. Okay, so we'll add a component, and the component again will be a new script, and I'm just going to call it bullet script. Okay, and I'll create and add that. So you should, when you do that, if you do it through the add component bit, just take a while just to do here, but eventually you'll see that the bullet script is now attached to your capsule, or to your bullet. Okay. Now, just pointing note, we have to watch out here that there's no collider here. Okay, the collider happens to be with the capsule. So that may cause issues later. We'll come back to that a little later, okay? But just watch out, because if we look for a collider or something in this bullet script on the same object, it's going to look where the bullet script is, and it's not going to find it there. Okay, so just watch out. So that's something that we just might have to be just a little wary of. Okay, so here we have our bullet script, and the bullet is, well, I suppose, what do we want the bullet to do? We want the bullet to move forward. Okay, so just go up here, just make sure, edit, preferences, external tools, make sure we have Microsoft Visual Studio selected here, not open by file extension. Okay, we again, assets, open by C# project. And all things going to plan. For a while, our code should load up. Okay, fairly slow today. Okay. So we're loading up. As you can see, when you come in here first, I've got the dark mode on. The Solution Explorer here is docked here on the right. If you click on it, it should open it up. Okay, now the default setting is that it's opened up. I kind of dock it because I really want to get as much of the screen as possible for just for visual purposes for coding. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to expand the assembly C# and expand the assets, and you can see the bullet script is in here. So when you click on that, we are into the script here. Okay, now we've seen these before. We've added them, so it's no big deal. No big deal. So let's quickly go through what we need to do to make our bullet move. Okay, so our bullet will do what? It will move ahead, forward at a very fast speed. So the way we do that, again, as before, to make something move, you need to change the position. And we plus equals, so we add something to its position. Now we need to give it a speed and a direction, and we need to adjust for the frame rate. Okay, so the speed, I'm just going to call it bullet speed, for lack of a better word. Now it's complaining because I haven't created that yet, but we'll come to that in a minute. So bullet speed multiplied by. Now the next thing we're going to provide is the direction, and the direction is going to be whatever the direction the bullet is facing. So we just go the transform.forward gives you the direction that well, if we're going to be precise about it, the transform.forward gives you the forward vector. In other words, what way it's facing, the blue vector when we looked at it in Unity, or the blue arrow when we looked in Unity, of the object that this script is attached to. Okay, now going back to Unity, this script is attached to this transform, which is this bullet. So the forward we're looking about is this blue guy here. Okay, so that's the direction. Now what that gives you is a vector of length 1. It's called a unit vector in the direction, whatever direction the bullet is facing. Okay, now the next thing we do is we adjust for frame rate, and we use the time.delta time for that. Again, we've discussed this already. Speed, or distance, equals speed by time. In other words, if you're traveling at 5 miles an hour for 3 hours, you're going to go 15 miles. So basically, this is the amount of time that passes in a frame. The update is called every frame, once per frame, as it says here. So this will adjust it so that if the frame rate slows down or speeds up appreciably, the bullet speed won't change. The overall bullet speed won't change. Now, I was complaining about this because it doesn't exist, because we haven't created it. So I'm just going to create that now. So this bullet speed is a speed as opposed to a velocity. And for the maths geeks among us, so I include myself in this, what I mean by that is A bullet speed is a scalar value, whereas a velocity is a vector value. Okay, so the bullet speed is what you see when you're driving your car and your speed up, 60 kilometers an hour, 70 kilometers an hour. Velocity is a speed and a direction. Okay, so you might be traveling at 70 kilometers an hour due south or due north or whatever. So you have a direction in which you're heading as well. So the bullet speed in this case is a scalar, and the way this sort of scalar is going to be a floating point. So I'm going to create that up here, and I'm going to assign a value of, say, 20. I have no idea what that will look like, but it's as good as anything to start. So what we're saying is the bullet speed is going to be 20 units, in this case, per second. So, for example, if this is the transformed up position, it should move our character. This will be the velocity. It should move our bullet at 20 units per second, but in whatever direction the forward is. Okay, so let's see if that works. So we'll just build that to make sure I haven't any errors. We go back to Unity. You can see it's bringing in the scripts and checking them out for us. So when we run this, there she goes. Okay, and if I was to turn it around, say 180, do that. Not in the right direction. Okay, so we've actually sent it kind of up again, but you can see it's actually coming back, but I don't think we'll actually see it. Really, it's gone on here. It doesn't matter. It's going forward, and that's kind of all we wanted the bullet to do for the time being. So the bullet is got this little capsule attached to it. Now, obviously, if you've got a model of a bullet, you bring the model in and you could just attach that in the same way we attach this capsule. So this code should be fairly easy to use with whatever model for the bullet you would choose to use. Okay, so that's nice. It's created a bullet. Now the bullet has a script to make it move, and that's all we really want of the bullet. Okay, so let's just say that's our bullet. We're happy with that. What we'd like to do next is we'd like to be able to instantiate this bullet. What I mean by instantiate is a fancy word for saying create a bullet whenever we want through whatever means we want in script. Okay. For those of you with a little bit more knowledge, instantiate is basically when we're creating an instance of a class. Okay, so a class is a kind of a should we say a canned solution or a package of things, and when you create an instance of it, you're actually filling it with data, that sort of thing. So so that's our bullet. So we'd like to instantiate this. Now this is kind of a little bit more than a class. It's a class. It's what we call a model behavior class in Unity, but it's a game object effectively. Okay, so we need to do something to this to be able to recreate this in whatever way we'd like. Okay, so or whatever we'd like. So to do that, we have to make what we call a prefab. Okay, now when we think of prefabs, and when I think of prefabs, I think of those rectangular buildings. They literally come on the back of a lorry and they're dropped down on a crane to wherever they're supposed to be. And this stands for prefabrication. They're pre-made. Okay, so we have made something here. Okay, now not exactly the biggest thing in the world, but it's got something that there's a little bit of work to put it together. We had a script and we had to do a little bit of messing about with the orientation to make it work. So there was a little bit of work to make that bullet. Okay, so to make a prefab of it, all you do is you make sure you're not playing. You drag the object that you want to make a prefab, in this case the bullet, to the assets down here and release. So it's left click, drag and release it down here. And then you can see you get this kind of square with the picture of the bullet in there. Okay, so that now is a prefab, a prefabricated bullet that's been made. Okay, so I can delete this in here, and if I wanted to, I could literally drag all of these guys out there, loads of them out there, just dragging out loads of different bullets into different places. And if I was to press play, they all shoot away because they're all bullets. That's what they do. Okay, so that's nice, but that's all. That's, again, it's not what we want. What we'd like to be able to do is create it through some sort of code. Okay, so we need something to do the firing. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, for the time being, create a 3D object, and I'm going to make a cube. Okay, and this is our guy. Here we go. And our guy is, I'm going to make him just a little bit taller. There we go. And so if he's, say, 4 units high, and I'm just going to move him up 2, just so he'll be there, and maybe give him a bit of a head. So what is it? It's 3D object and a sphere, and just move that up to here. That's fine. So that's obviously 4.5 to get that bang on. And now if we wanted to, we could add more stuff in there, kind of as to make arms or whatever, just to give us a perspective on which direction he's facing. Now that's probably not a bad idea. So what I'll do is I'll just create a GameObject, 3D object, and we'll go what we do. Let's create another cube. I'm going to move it up to where the head is. I'm going to move it a little bit forward. Scale it down to 1/10. Let's zoom in here now just to see if we can. Now, that obviously should be at 4.5. 5. And okay, it's kind of a small nose, but you get the picture. Okay, so this is our guy. He has his head and his nose attached to him. So our guy, if he moves now, if we move our guy at the top, again, this could be another prefab. Okay, now I'm not concerned about the ins and outs of how accurate this is going to be. I just want to use this as a kind of a point where we can get our bullets to shoot from. Okay, so our guy is going to need some element of control. We're going to need some element of control because he's the character, and he's going to shoot. So he's going to be the one who determines, look, if you press this, then you fire a bullet. Simple as. So to do that, we need a script again. And the script is going to be a character script. Okay, create an add. So we create this character script, and when you do that, you just, quite often it pops you straight back to Visual Studio. It should load in automatically. Okay, so this is our character script here. And this is great. So I could make this guy move if I wanted to, and we probably might do that a little later just to kind of see things happen. But for the time being, let's just see if we can instantiate a bullet. Okay, so to instantiate a bullet, we would typically use the word instantiate because instantiate, and we would pass in, and it's usually looking for an original object. Okay, now this is kind of a problem because we're here in code, okay, and the object that we want to get access to is this bullet here. It's a prefab. And on the face of it, you know, near the twain shall meet, they're far away from each other. Okay, so we'd love to be able to get access to some means of getting this into our character script. But you can see the character script is actually there. So maybe there's a means of getting this in here. Now, I can't just drop that down there because it doesn't let me. It says give me the no-go symbol. So that doesn't work. So somehow we have to make this more acceptable, or more get a means of accepting the bullet. Okay, so the instantiation here needs, well, if you look at this, it says, look, it needs an original thing. Okay, now, but you also have loads of what we call overloads, loads of different versions of this instantiate function. And if you click down through these, you can see object original. Okay, so it's all kind of object original type thing. Okay, now what they're really talking about there is, I don't want to get into details there, but it's basically it's kind of like the absolute basic that anything in Unity could be. Okay, it's just a base object. It's even lower than what we call a game object, and every transform is effectively anything that has a transform is a game object, and vice versa. So I'd like to either, this works with both because we can work with either. You can put a game object in here, and I'm going to call this bullet tone template. That's just the name of something, and it's a game object. But I need to be able to get access or fill this value. This is just an empty box that takes a game object. Okay, so we've talked about these boxes before. A variable is a box that takes a certain type of thing. So the type of thing that we want to put in here is a game object. The game object is effectively the bullet. So that is a game object. When we pull it out here, it becomes something that has a transform. So it is a game object. So to get access to that, what we need to do is make a kind of an area here visible to put that in. Okay, and to do that in Unity, what you do is you just make it a public variable. Okay, so you put public game object, whatever the name you choose. Now you could choose whatever name you want here. It's just a variable name. And then if you do that, then you can instantiate that bullet clone. So you can literally type bullet clone template in there. What that's going to do is whatever you put in to this variable here, okay, now that I'll show you that in a minute. This is going to make a copy of it here. Okay, so let's see what happens. So I'm going to build that. That's good. I'll go back to Unity. Now, has anything changed when we go back to Unity here? All right. So when we go back to Unity, you can see our character script down here now has a bullet clone template space, and there's nothing in there. So if I run this, it's going to give me an error because it was trying to instantiate something and it expected me to put something in here. Okay, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to put that bullet in here, and that's going to instantiate the bullet. I press play. And you can't really see it. I'll just show you in the, it's creating a lot of bullets. Okay, now that's actually, I don't know if you can make that out. That's actually moving. Each of these bullets are moving. It's just been created at a ridiculous rate. What are we creating? We're creating one every frame. Okay, so in this case, if I look at the stats here, we're running at 42 frames per second. So we're creating 42 or 43 of these bullets every single second. Okay, so that's not what we want. And if we kept this going, I'm just going to run out of memory and probably have a crash. So I'm just going to stop that before that happens. So I've created these bullets, but that's obviously just creating them every game loop. Obviously, what we would normally do is we would create them when you press a button. Okay, so for example, the typical way we do that would go if tab. So the thing we want to do is inside in here, and this is the condition. The condition we're going to put will be input dot now. Get key down makes more sense here. Now, if you want to put get key, it's cool, it's a bit of fun, whatever. It'll basically do what we did there, except for as long as you have the key pressed. Okay. So here I'm just going to give it key code. What do I say? Space. Now it's complaining there. What's complaining about? Where it's missing a bracket. So we just click there. Make sure we have 2 brackets to close it off. Open, open, close, close. Good. Instantiate bullet. So what this is saying is if you press space, then instantiate a bullet come. And it should only happen once for each time you do press space. So let's see if that works. Build. Go back to Unity. So, press play. Now we've probably got the wrong view here. So I'll just show you here. So if I'm here, press space, boink, boink, boink. And so on. So we have a means of creating bullets. Happy days. Okay, so that's instantiation and prefabs. So obviously you can make the prefabs as complicated as you want, but we ideally prefer the instantiation seems fairly straightforward. But let's look what happens here. Let's just have a quick camera. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get our guy, and I'm going to press space, fire, 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 no bother. Now I'm going to move our guy. I'm going to press space again. And I'm going to move him again. Press space again. Okay. That's not exactly what we want, is it? We would ideally like the bullets to come from wherever the character is. And we just instantiated them without any reference to, you know what, this is where I want you to go. In fact, not only this is where I want you to be instantiated at, we haven't also said what direction you want to go. I mean, ideally, if you're in a game, you'd like to be able to turn your character and move your character so that the bullets will go in different directions. So let's have a quick look at how that might be done. So here's the bullet clone template, and you can see that that's fairly straightforward, but ideally here, so again, what I'm doing here is I want to see what other options are available to me. You remember I said there was more than one version of Instantiate? So what I've done is I've deleted the open bracket and put it again, and that triggers the IntelliSense to give you all the different options. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll through these, and you can see here the 4th option is instantiate the object. Well, that's fine. We had that anyhow, but it gives you the option of a position and it gives you the option of a rotation. Okay, there's none that just gives you the option of a position there. You have to put a position or a rotation in there. So this is basically saying, you know what? I think it sounds pretty obvious what this is going to do. This is going to create it at this position with this rotation. Normally they would let you know that. So we'll see how that goes. So where would we like this to be created? Now I'm just going to be absolutely basic here. I would like this to be created wherever my guy is, or wherever our guy is. Okay, so to get hold of that, we need our guy's position. Our guy's position is on our guy's transform. To get our guy's transform, it's the transform that's connected to the character script. Okay, let's go back to just show you what I mean by that. Here is our guy. Okay, just minimize these things down. There's our script, character script here, and there's the transform that describes the position of our guy. Okay, so that's the position I'm interested in. So when I go transform, dot position, that will give us the position of our guy, of our character. Okay, now the next thing we need to put in here is the orientation, and for the time being I'm just going to put turn in dot identity. Okay, Not going into quaternions. All you have to know about them is that they are used for rotations in three-dimensional space. Invented by an Irishman called Hamilton, but story about that in the bridge in Dublin, but we'll deal with that another day. So this should do what? It should instantiate a bullet at the position of the character with the default rotation. Let's see if that works. We build that. Let's go back to Unity. So I press fire and that's good. Now you notice how it's coming out of his middle as opposed to out of his legs last time. Why? Because his middle is at 0, 2 for Y and 0. So that makes sense. So if I was to move my character and shoot again, move him back. All right. Okay. That all seems to work. Okay, so I'll just move him back into the center here. Now, obviously, we've already talked about how to move him properly using key presses. So all you have to do is implement that code in there to make that happen. Now, I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to rotate my guy. Okay, he's looking up. Okay, what happens when I press space now? Not good. Okay, let's move him back to 0. Rotate him this way. Okay, so his orientation isn't any good. Okay, so that again, that's why I left the orientation of the bullet as the default identity one, do nothing. But ideally, the rotation of the bullet should be the same as the rotation of the character, or probably more correctly, the gun that they're shooting it out of if you're going to that sort of detail. So ideally, instead of having the default rotation, we should just put the rotation of the character in instead. Okay, so let's see if that makes a difference. So if we go here and instead of using quaternion.identity, we go transform dot, and you can see rotation is the first thing that pops up in the IntelliSense. So that's the orientation effectively of your, well, what is it? It's the rotation of the transform connected to this script, which is the character script. So basically, yes, it's our character's rotation. So again, if I was to build this, and go back to here, and I was to press play. So now, if I fire, if I rotate my guy, this way. Okay, that worked. So we now have our character being able to manipulate, not only create an object, but being able to put it in whatever position he wants to start off and put it in whatever orientation it wants to start off. Now there are loads of other options in here. One of the nice ones in here gives you the option to make the to pass in the template or the transform of the parent. So in other words, in the same way we got the head to attach to the cube here and the nose to attach to the head there, these are basically parent-child and then a parent-child again. And when one moves, the other moves with it, or the children move with it. That is really nice because what that allows you to do, it allows you to, for example, create an instance of something and put it into somebody's hand, or put it on their head if it's a hat or something like that. So some nice things you can do there. Anyhow, so that creates our bullet. I suppose the final thing we'd like to be able to do would be maybe to use the bullet to attack and hit something and do some damage. Okay, so let's create a victim. So here is our victim, and it's going to be a 3D object, and I'm going to make our victim a sphere. Okay, set the Y to 0, and I'm going to make it big. So it's visible and we can see it. Okay, I'm just going to make it up, move it up a little higher. Okay, so you can see that, and this is our sphere, and what we want to do is we want our sphere to basically, we want to be able to hit this guy with our sphere, or hit the sphere with our bullet. Okay, so now I suppose there's lots of ways we can do this. The easiest way here, let's see if we can do it this way. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a physics and a rigid body here. I'm not going to allow gravity to work there. And well, let's see what happens when we do this. Okay, something happened. It looked like it hit it, and it did some damage. Okay, so ideally, what we'd like to be able to do is we'd like to be able to register that we hit damage and maybe possibly, you know, knock some health down off them or something, have some health in there to be adjusted. So let's see how we might do that. Okay, so first things first, can we detect a collision? Now we've done this already, if you remember in the rigid body, the rigid body video. So you look for an OnCollisionEnter. So again, I never know what this is, so I just look for, I type ONCOL or whatever, and you see what it's there, and you just press tab and it will fill it out nicely for you. Okay, now always test. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to print out. Okay, so this is just, I just want to make sure that we're getting here, because believe it or not, the collisions, the OnCollisionEnter, when you don't have them both as rigid bodies, which we don't at this moment in time, it can be a bit dodgy at times. It can be, there's different techniques or different situations where collisions won't work between different types of game objects, depending on whether you have rigid bodies or they're kinematic, etc., etc. Let's just see what happens here just to test this out. So here we do that, we print out. So I go back here to Unity, and I'll press play. Now, you note nothing printed. Okay, so let's have a quick look at our bullet just to make sure that was it there. Okay, there. That's not correct. Let's go back to our code. Oh, sorry. Where did I put? I put the OnCollisionEnter in our character, not in our bullet script. Okay, so obviously that's kind of silly. Well, it's not necessarily silly, but we want our bullet to hit something, so we need the OnCollisionEnter to be our bullet checking to see if it's a collision. Okay, so we build that. Let's try again. Okay, that does not appear to be working either. Okay, we would have got an ouch. Let's just check to make sure. Our bullet clone has a bullet script. The bullet script has OnCollisionEnter ouch. Okay, so that's not working the way I'd like it to. So I'm going to just make it work a bit better. So I'm going to have to go back into our bullet prefab here, and I'm going to add a component to that. And the component I'm going to add is a physics and a rigid body. Okay, and let's see how that affects things. Oh, I probably have gravity on it, but anyway. Yeah, you can see I have gravity on it now. That's not necessarily good, but you can see the ouch is actually registering. Okay, so I'll just undo the gravity here. Press play again. When I run, sorry, I'm getting ouches, okay, which is good. So that means we're getting into this code here, which detects a collision. So what I'd like to do is say, I hurt you. Okay, now the last day we just accessed the transform of the object. Okay, so the transform of the object was the allows us to change the position. Remember those planes, and we got the position when we hit it, we moved the plane up or down depending on what we wanted to do. We want to be a bit more precise here. Okay, and when you want to be precise, it really means you need code to do it. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Unity here. And I'm going onto my sphere here, and I'm going to add a component here. And the script I'm going to add here is health. Oh, it doesn't have to be called health. It could be a character script, or it could be a goodie or a baddie or whatever. So whatever name you wanted. So there's a health script. I've added it to it. And basically what I'm going to do here is, when our bullet collides with something, it looks for a health script. If it finds a health script, it then uses a method in the health script to say, I hit you. Okay, so let's see what would you typically like the health script to do. So if we go in here and we go to the health script, typically in most games, you use integers to represent your health. So normally you'd have, say, the max hit points might be 100. And then you might have, excuse me, current hit points might be equal to 100 at the start as well. Okay, now depending on what the game is, you might have power-ups that might increase the MHP and that sort of thing. If you're dealing with a role-playing game, then these values would be going up and up and up as your experience increased, as your levels increased, etc. But that's what we're looking at here. Now, what we're going to do here is we're just going to create a method in here called take damage. Okay, now this take damage, we'll pass in an integer value, call it how much damage. Okay, now it's complaining because that's not the way to define a method. Okay, so to define a method, you have to say, first and foremost, well, when you think about just the method itself, you want to say, first and foremost, what does it return? So if I was to take two numbers and pass them into addition, 3 plus 4 gives me 7. It returns a 7. In this case, it returns 7, which is an integer. So it takes two integers in and it passes an integer out. In this case, it doesn't give us anything back. It just registers a damage. That's all. So to say that it doesn't pass anything back, we say void. There's no damage. Okay. Now we also need to process whatever needs to be done. So for example, how much damage is there? So what is how much damage going to do? So how much damage is going to be subtracted from the current hit points. Okay, so if you pass in damage of 10, then the current hit points should be knocked down to 90 if it's 100 at the start. So basically you're going to have to go CHP minus equals how much damage. Now, so this is a method that just allows us to check to take damage. Now, what we should also do is say if tab. Now, what's the condition? The condition I'm looking for here is if CHP is less than or equal to 0. Okay, if your current hit point is 0 or less, then you're dead. Okay, so obviously in a game you're probably going to have to go through some sort of elaborate dying animation, etc., etc. In this case, I'm just going to go destroy GameObject, just so we can see something happen. Okay, and if we wanted to, we could print it out, but let's see if this works. Let's see if this works. So I'm going to build this, and I'm going to go back to my bullet script. And here, now as I said before, we've seen this already, so I'm happy enough to kind of move along reasonably quickly on it. What we would like to do is we would like to see that this bullet has hit something. We're going to say if it's got health script, then take the damage. Okay, so let's do that. So basically, what we have to do is we have to, well, let's have a look at the collision. The collision script gives us access to the transform, which allows us to get components. And the component that we're looking for is of type health. So this basically, this line of code here, well, it's only half a line of code really, but this bit here basically gets us a health script of whatever we hit. Now, if we hit something that doesn't have a health script, it's going to return null, or something. You're looking for something that's not there. You're not going to find it, so you're going to come back empty-handed. So what we need to do is we need to check to see if we found something. Okay, so the way we do that is we cache the health script that we find into a variable. So because it's a health script, I'm going to call this possible victim. So I'm looking for a health script in the thing I hit, and if I find well, whatever I find, I'm going to put it into this box, which is expecting a health script called possible victim. Then what I'd like to do is I'd like to say, do you know what? If I found you, if you do have a health script, that means, I mean, as I said, you could hit a wall which has no health script, or something that's invulnerable or something that can't be damaged, then you won't find a health script on it. So if that, what this basically says is, if you found something here, if this is not null effectively, then do the following. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to call the method that we create called take damage. And I'm going to give it 25 units of health or of damage when this guy hits it. Now, oh my God, why is it complaining? Okay, so if we hover over this, it's basically saying health take damage int. In other words, the method in the health script called take damage that takes integers is inaccessible due to its protection level. Okay, now we've already seen this before. The types of protection levels that we've seen are public, which we used at the top of the bullets, well, of the character script, to allow us to see this variable outside of this class, in fact, in Unity. But we've seen private. The default setting is private. That means you can't be seen outside the script. You can't get access to it. So this bullet speed here is private. If you're outside of the script, you will not see it. Okay? But we would like this take damage here to be visible to possible victim, to here, so that we can access it and call it. Okay? And to do that, I prefer to use the internal accessibility level. Okay, so this allows us to see this take damage. Now again, just go back to this. If I had just gone dot here to see what's available to me, and if I scroll down, because I've made it internal, you can now see that that method is available to me. Click on that. What would I say? 25. So what that basically is going to do is every time a bullet, because we're in the bullet script, collides with something, it prints out, fine. It looks on the thing it hit, it looks for a health script. Okay, so this is the collision. This is the thing we collided with. This is get a component on the thing we collided with it that's of type health, the health script. If you find it, put it in here. Okay, so it will find it or it won't. If it finds it, this will be true, and therefore we can call that method. Otherwise, it won't find it and will do nothing. So let's see if that works. Build solution, good. So ideally, we'll fire four of these things, and it'll hit it 4 times, and it should destroy our sphere. 1, whoops, 2, 3, 4. Yes, sphere gone. And we have successfully destroyed the sphere, and we have successfully obviously while we instantiated our object, we got our object to move off at bullet speed or whatever, and then check to see if there's a collision. If there is a collision, we check to see if it hits something. If it hits something, we then try to destroy it. So just to show you that that doesn't work all the time. In other words, if I was to create file GameObject 3D object plane, and let's make this 100 by 100 by 100. Okay, now the plane has a collider. So if I was to run this, and let's just turn my guy around here now. I don't want to, I'm going to move him down, or rotate him down so these fine. So if I shoot this now, okay, we got an ouch. We have another ouch. We got another ouch. 4, 5. Okay, they're kind of skimming off in a weird way, but if we look at here, we've got 16 ouches now. So obviously that implies that it should have, well, what should it have done? It should definitely have destroyed that, but obviously it can't destroy it because it doesn't have a health script. If you wanted it to have a health script, all you have to do is drag the health script onto the plane. Okay, just because we made it for one thing doesn't mean we can't use it in another. And press play again. Oh, will that work? Let me see. Sorry, I'm moving the wrong thing again. Ah! And as you can see, our plane has disappeared now because we put a health script on it. Okay, now obviously we probably should destroy the bullets as well, but look, that's beside the point. Okay, so does that, I hope that clears it up. There's, what have we covered today then? We've covered creating prefabs. We've covered, instantiation of our prefabs, and we've also covered how to communicate with what things that we hit through our prefabs or through code. Okay, so I hope that was helpful, and if you have any questions, please talk to me in class or leave a comment below. Okay, guys, we finished there, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.